Okay. My name is Rainer Horn. I'm the managing partner of SpaceTec Capital, but also of SpaceTec Partners. We're building a venture capital firm on the experience and the heritage of 20 years in consultancy, 15 years particularly in the space arena, a group I created myself serving distinguished public and private clients in space and space applications. So on this basis, we're creating now the SpaceTec Fund, a German vehicle, 80 to 100 million target size for early stage investments, venture capital in space-related activities. In the area of new space, which folds up into 4 different areas. Certainly in-space applications, as explained by Kyle right now, to some extent, but more so from our end, we're more down to earth. Our business is nearer, down to earth, is investing in specific assets and disruptors that we see happening, touching B2B businesses on earth. You'll see some of the information on the tables, but we can go more into it. But I'd like to first go back in my consulting life, which I'm still very much into, and explain to you why it happens. It was already outlined. The BBC, the Billionaires Boys Club, has started some of the space race. One of them, unfortunately, has already left the planet. But I'm sure that these guys will bring more to it. But another important movement is not only space vision and going out of the atmosphere, it's combining, looks like the line has dropped on the Mac transition, doesn't matter. We have created the so-called SpaceTech curve, where we show where are other technologies that are coming in, AI, virtual reality, and so forth, which ones have an impact on space. And if you look carefully, you see some disappearing. The graph, yeah. So the ones that are still white are the ones that are absolutely relevant for space. So we see that IC innovation and mindset are fueling the space tech revolution. During the space race in the 60s, the IT industry was born as a side product of the space race. IBM and others suddenly got fast computers and so forth, accelerated through the space race. Now the ICT world is paying back and disrupting space. Disrupting space with, on the one side, computing power, software to optimize suboptimal hardware in space, reduced size computing power, and a mindset and an agile engineering mentality that is permeating now the space business and giving landmark cost cuttings by the factor of 10 or 50 or 100 in certain cases. And in this area, this is where we are active. So, and this is what's happening if you look at this generic tech S-curve that you have with the typical investor cycles. The traditional space tech XS curve is longer, and it's not investable by a VC fund traditionally. But through these factors of new space, miniaturization, software-enabled agile development, and Silicon Valley-like entrepreneur capability and thinking and speed, space tech and space-related activities get investable. So a few examples of small satellite constellations. Some of these satellites, like Planet, they're the size of a shoebox. And others are maybe the size of a tiny hotel fridge. They're getting launched by existing rockets, but also new rockets being done. This is an example here from India. On one rocket a year ago, 104 satellites have been brought into orbit, and all of these were the passengers on this space ride. And all of them have active satellites in the activity. Now, I learned that not everybody of you is from the space industry, so let's explain a little bit what is between us and the moon. Between us and the moon, there are various so-called orbits: LEO, MEO, and GEO. GEO, you know from satellite TV, it's practically a ring above the equator with stationary satellites beaming down television signals or high-speed internet to some extent, very expensive high-speed internet. MEO is where the GPS, Galileo, and other Earth and other navigation satellites are sitting in a different in-between. And then there's LEO, which NASA declared from the American side, this is competitive space, we retreat from that. The only governmental thing up there is a few Earth observation satellites, or spy satellites, and the International Space Station, of course, in the very low LEO orbit. So here the satellites have to go on a certain speed in order not to fall down. And they are kind of rotating, whilst in GEO, they're constantly unstable. And in the sun synchronous orbit, where they go over the poles all the time, those take pictures or measure certain things or radar data on the sky. So much a bit of a mini space lecture. Now, we're talking about satellite navigation, Earth observation, satellite communications, and robotics, and many other innovations coming out of the space by public innovations funded, by government funded, through ESA, European Union, national governments, and so forth. But we also see an element of space entrepreneurism, some of the things that I mentioned right now. And the big thrust that I'd like to deepen here in this presentation, I'll go quickly into it. Number one, ubiquitous connectivity. A new layer of internet is being built around the Earth. SpaceX wants to launch 4,000 satellites, OneWeb 1,000 satellites, Boeing 2,500 satellites. And you see here in the room, we have Astrocast doing an IoT constellation. I don't know exactly how many satellites, but probably 10 to 20 to 50. And companies doing specific antennas to power autonomous drive cars with satellite connectivity. You already experienced it on your business flight. This is how Lufthansa explains it to the customers, how it works, currently with geostationary satellites, but that may change. And also how ships are being tracked around the world. This is shipping lines of container ships and other ships because they have an automatic identification system. This is OneWeb and their vision of building 1,000 satellites around. But what's the revolution? It's investors that are not really spacey investors. Why would you expect Coca-Cola to be invested in this? Well, they want to build in Africa kiosks and an internet connection and building practically the community center for people to buy their Coke and other products from the Coca-Cola branch. Terrestrial telecom companies, mobile companies are involved because they see they can bring their knowledge in from the regulatory side and complement to this. SoftBank is one of the biggest investors in this, next to Airbus, who's building the satellites. And here's the revolution. You see, a telecom satellites used to be the size of at least of a delivery van, 5 tons, 10 tons, something like that. And you see here the difference for the lower flying ones, 150 kilos, 2 men can carry it if needed. Yeah? And they're building it in a semi-automated production, serial production right now. The first 10 satellites have made it to Kourou, the European spaceport, yesterday. And of course, it will take a while, but they're working on it. Next one, positioning. New satellite systems, in addition to GPS, are being built. The European Galileo system, the Chinese Compass systems, and some of these have new capabilities beyond GPS. A better timing signal, authentication, and a high precision free service. So on this one, you see applications, all kind of transport modes and in your devices, and IoT applications and mobile applications for smart cities, monitoring assets, what have you, going forward. And if you just take a look, Galileo, this is a Galileo-enabled phone. And if you have a phone that is maximum a year old from one of the bigger brands and the phone that is more than 300 euros, you probably have already Galileo enabled. That means it uses several constellations and you get a better fix and a better precision in your phone. Next one, autonomous motion. Robotics and drones stem largely from space labs and from space near labs. This is an area where we also want to look into because we have exclusive arrangement with the German Aerospace Center, one of the top centers for robotics, and we also work with ETH. We worked with them setting up the incubation center that you have here. And this is an area where we see a lot of things happening. And also, data integration will happen between drones and satellite data. The data intelligence, business. Robotics from space have made it into man's-eye or earthly robotics. Production robots like this, DLR spin-off in Munich, making little production robots, even productions that replicate itself. So next one, geointelligence, is really about taking intelligence out of satellite data drone aerial data of other sorts, and mixing it with other alternative data to take better decisions on Earth for business. This comes through free and open data becoming available, 15 terabyte per day from Copernicus program, free of charge alone, near real-time, better processing, big data, innovative methods for weather forecasting. And I'll show a few examples. Many of these constellations have been created to monitor the Earth, to monitor to do better policy and to oversee the environment, or for defense spying objectives. I see some gentleman even has the SDG here on here. 2/3 of the SDGs can be measured with space data. So look at this picture from one of these examples. There was a tsunami in Indonesia, and I'm just going to flip back and forth, and you see within a few seconds what the tsunami does and how it has been watched from space. Yeah? Frightening to see this, but it gives you an impression of monitoring volcanoes and so forth. Check out Copernicus EU and you'll see more of these type of pictures. So the Copernicus program alone gives 15 terabytes per data free of charge. We know the ins and outs of this business because we, in the consulting business, run the marketing and outreach team, and we even analyze the requirements for the next generation for the European Union for satellites to be launched in the next 5 to 10 years. If you're watching Euronews, you might see information about the air quality index. This is a public product from Copernicus, which comes after the weather report every day, several times. Pollution, watching pollution, watching methane, all these type of things is possible from space. And even companies like Schlumberger have their own satellites to identify certain things that are relevant for their oil exploration support. Now let's take this example. Radar satellite, which doesn't take pictures, it takes false image, but it also takes information about the humidity of the soil. This is a NASA picture free of charge. And what these guys from Vandersat have done in Holland, they have overlaid different pictures and they can get it down to 100 by 100 meters. And of course, that's a revolution. We looked into investing in them, and we were not ready for investing yet, but we said we have good relations with Swiss Re, we matched them up, and Swiss Re gave them the first contract, and then Bayer Crop Science a few weeks later as well. So they're working together. It's a product that Swiss Re is using, and a cooperation that they have in mind for better agricultural support in reinsurance. There's a side product of GPS and Galileo and Earth and navigation signals. There are companies, several around the world, who are using it as a weather meteorology project. So they're measuring the humidity in the clouds to get a prediction of the cloud development. This very important business intelligence, looking at the filling rate, determining the filling rate of oil containers. This is an example from China, to understand how much oil reserves do the Chinese have, how many cars are there on the parking lots of Walmart, and so forth. So with this kind of business intelligence in the Bloomberg terminals and others where these things are feeding in, financial analysts are able to do better predictions. And this one is a side product presented 2 days ago by Vinci and their data party. This is a picture from LA where they're monitoring the urban development and transportation for them, and suddenly they discovered that there's something going on here. Subsidence. It's the boring company. It's the boring company. So, yes. But I mean, you're more, but yeah, this it is. This indeed, yeah. So, and you see more and more non-space companies in Japan, but also in other places, getting into space. So Canon set their standard cameras, put them on satellites, tested successfully, still working, and they're now planning 100 satellite constellation. Amazon just entered the market big time, practically saying we're not only providing the data storage for these gazillions of data, we also want to give a controlled access, and we want to build the ground stations on this. This started like a bombshell in the space industry a few weeks ago. I mean, this will further democratize space business. And I think that's also a sign that it's a data analysis for us. That's the immediate opportunity because the infrastructure for that is there. Now, On your desk, you see on each one version of this brand new study launched 2 days ago from the European Investment Bank, co-authored, I would say 90% by SpaceTec partners. It gives you a great overview. It's free of charge. It can be downloaded from the websites. Gives you a great overview on the business models in outer space, ground to space, space to ground, and comparisons between North America, Europe, who are the key investors, case studies of investments that have happened in the last years, and the first IPOs. It also gives an overview of how public funding relates and how then commercialization, what the opportunity is. There's so much governmental funding going into European research. We are helping our LP investors to benefit from this free money that is out there, this innovation pipeline that we know how to milk, and to arbitrage on back of that. And even the European Union is putting more money into funds like us to make this opportunity real. This is the funding chain that has developed over the last 10 years, starting with these research programs, innovation centers. We have incubation facilities like the ESA BIC. You have the flyers here. We were instrumental in shaping the ESA Business Incubation Center at ETH for Switzerland. Networking platforms, regional funds, and so forth. We are positioned as a specialized fund in a continent where the funds are not of the same size as in North America. Here you need specialized fund to help the medium-sized and smaller funds and the corporates to identify the right opportunity, to co-invest with them. But in most cases, we would like to be the lead investors when it's in Europe. This is where we're positioned. This is the ESA Business Incubation Center. We helped ETH to bring these partners to bear, and 29 of them have already engaged with the startups here in Switzerland. And you see there's quite some finance partners here, Zürcher Kantonalbank and so forth, B2V, that are partners in this investor network next to SpaceTec. And these are some of the current incubatees, companies that get up to 500,000 euros of funding. As an investor, you're probably interested in what's happening there. There are quite a few companies in Europe in the last 1.5 years who went through an IPO. Avio is a traditional private equity carve-out floated company. The others are startups that have gone very early to the stock exchange, a high bet, and quite successful in terms of fundraising. The markets go up and down, but definitely some are consolidating the market, helping to consolidate the market. Others are disappointing at the short term, but I mean, I think things are moving there. Mynaric is a company, the first spin-off from DLR that went to an IPO. I was the first business coach helping them to shape up, and the supplier I introduced personally to them 7 years ago is still their core supplier. So this is the SpaceTec fund. Little flyers are on the table if you're interested. Happy to discuss with you afterwards and take it from there. This is the SpaceTec fund team. 2 experienced VCs from the Silicon Valley and from the European venture scene. Andreas, it might be known to you as the co-founder of Sat2 International here in recently exited here in Zurich. And my colleague and myself from SpaceTec grabbing these opportunities for you. If you want to know more on the knowledge side, download these studies from our website, the brand new one from the European Investment Bank. And of course, we have an investor presentation ready for you. Thank you for that and for the opportunity. Yeah.